Hello, good afternoon. My name is Deigratia Daniels, and I'm going to be speaking about using virtual reality, augmented reality, and the tools and techniques in community for community engagement. And then I'll speak about some particular instances of implementing these techniques in the community. One specific example is the Black Man Simulator. Our schedule and agenda, I'll give a quick background about myself. I will have a brief summary, give a quick summary, which you can see to the right here, and go over the discussion points that I've prepared for you. At the end, I will have a Q&A if there are any questions from anybody. We have some time at the end, and then on the last slide will be contact and my social media information. So topic summary. Discuss using VR, discuss using AR technology to promote a deeper level of understanding, compassion, and empathy. You know, kind of the presentation before mine, it was an amazing segue. You know, they talked about empathy and compassion, and those are some of the topics and items I will speak about in my projects. My background is I've been working in this industry for about 2 decades. I went to graduate school for this stuff, which is virtual reality and augmented reality at a program at University of Central Florida. And I have a master's in interactive simulation and training systems design. So from a long time ago, I was building 3D models for specifically the DoD part of VR and AR. Slightly different than the consumer level of VR, AR we're seeing now. We utilize smaller models, we utilize various protocols such as DIS protocol, HLA protocols, and these protocols allow us to have these massive real-time simulations over a large network, over large distances. So these are some of the things we focus on. Those are some of our priorities in the VR world in DoD. With that being said, after I graduated from grad school, I was immediately hired at Lockheed Martin to design and build training devices, and we're talking massive training devices where this whole stage would be on a motion platform. It's supported by hydraulic or some type of electromechanical lifts, and your entire environment is in VR, and your entire environment is moving. It's amazing. It's great toys to play with. Some of the projects that I worked on are flight simulators such as the F-22, F-35. I spent 10 years working on the C-130J maintenance and aircrew training system. So I have a lot of time and a lot of background and experience on avionic subsystems, as well as virtual reality and augmented reality. We at Lockheed Martin build many training systems, and we have a very high throughput of students and a very high mean time between failure. We had to operate at about a 98% of operating efficiency, meaning that it was only, I think we were only allowed to be down for a week out of the entire year. Also worked on a ton of armored and lightly armored vehicle simulators to prepare the individuals that serve and defend. We created systems and techniques to train our soldiers how to be prepared for unexpected scenarios so they can be prepared and come home safely back to us. I'm currently a project manager at a VR, AR company called Futurus, and we're based out of Atlanta. So if any of you find yourself in Atlanta, hey, stop by, we'll give you a tour of our facility. Human experience simulator. So working in the DoD, building these VR applications for so long, I had the opportunity to take these skills and experiences that I've had over the last 2 decades to transpose those into a different environment, to maybe share some experiences that we as individuals have. It was a unique thought. You know, no one in the office is talking about this stuff. So I'm way off left, you know, got these thoughts to myself all by myself. But there was opportunities that arose, and there were desires and outcries for conversations in and a need for dialogue. So I came up with this term. It's a generic term, human experience simulators. VR, AR-based simulators are extremely powerful experiential learning tools that quickly put the participant in the minds of a different character. I want to share what I've been through with you, right? I want to learn and understand your experiences. These are tools that will allow us to start down that path. Some of the inspirations behind the human experience simulator, specifically behind the Black Man simulator, were, as I mentioned earlier, social outcry for dialogue and change. You know, I started to notice these individuals or people want to dialogue, but you know, sometimes there's retaliation conversation, or people being ridiculed for asking, you know, questions, or the fear of like, oh, I don't want to ask a stupid question or offend anybody, right? You know, so I wanted to create an environment to where, hey, you know, come, let's talk, everything's fair game, let's have a dialogue, you know, no one's going to be offended, so let's create a space, a safe space for dialogue to have the tough conversations and ask the tough questions. Again, I presented myself, I had a unique opportunity based on my experience and my background that I could build something like this. Not only could I build it, I probably could build it at a fairly decent price, which I did. Some additional experience was the Museum of Civil Rights. It had just opened in Atlanta. It had been open maybe about a year, and I went to check it out. So if you can play the video we have here, you'll see a video of the Civil Rights 1960 sit-in exhibition.
The museum has a number of exhibits looking back on the protests that erupted during the 1960s. The outrage over the death of Emmett Till, which kick-started the civil rights movement. The Montgomery bus boycott. Who could forget Rosa Parks? And over here, there's a simulation where you can have the chance to experience what it was like to be a protester at a lunch counter sit-in. I tried it out, and I have to say it was like being transported back in time, experiencing what it may have been like for some of those protesters. I want to explain what you hear. You hear threats, you feel kicking in the seat, you hear dishes being thrown, names being called. What's your reaction?
It was terrifying.
It's just hard to imagine that we could treat another individual that way.
I see you crying.
It was very powerful. I think it was really well done, and you could really feel the very difficult things that people were willing to endure.
This was for about 1 minute and 36 seconds. Do you think you'd be able to do it for an entire day?
No, I don't think so.
So that was the exhibition at the museum, right? And with just some audio and then a static display, they were able to convey these experiences, right? The only visual cues that we had was this sit-in stand. So here I am at the museum, I'm experiencing this exhibition they had, and I'm thinking, I'm a VR guy, I'm an AR guy. I'm like, I can put an HMD over in here, right? You know, they need some visuals. I can make all this move. So you can see a little bit of the inspiration where I had for the Black Man simulator. And what I ended up doing for my particular project is I modeled the 1960s sit-in VR. And I replicated this particular exhibition at the museum in VR. It was about a minute-long exhibition, and it really turned out really well. Okay. So what did I do? How did I build it? What are the things I put together? You know, I didn't have a lot of money to build this thing and didn't have a lot of time. So some of the components that were becoming available to me, and I was trying to keep my costs low, were, at the time, we had the Oculus Rift DK2, right? It had just came out, it was brand new. I'm like, hey, let me get the latest and greatest. So this is what I'm developing on. This was the VR experience I was able to share with individuals. The production version of the Oculus Rift has much more capability than what I developed this on. I'm an Unreal Engine guy. I've been using Unreal Engine since the late 90s, and it's just beautiful. I know a lot of folks utilize Unity, but I use Unreal Engine, which was a free development environment. It has a lot of capability, and so I chose this tool because I was just familiar with it and used to it. The hardware I used for this was an MSI GT72. This was a little tiny laptop that had a lot of horsepower in it. Specifically, it had a mobile version of the NVIDIA 960 video card, which was the latest and greatest graphics card packed into a laptop at the time. So these things were, cooking, and they were a great price. It wasn't that expensive. Some of the free and low-cost solutions as far as development, where I use Maximo, where they had free character rigging and free character animations. Also use Adobe Fuse to generate some characters, some very generic characters. You can customize them to a certain degree under the free model, change the shirt, change the size, height. Autodesk has a character generator where I use for a couple of the entities as well. And then I use low-cost solutions where I needed to hire individuals. I went to Fiverr.com, where their model is where people sell their services at $5. So you can find some really cheap services to get things done. So the lessons learned, what did I learn? And where am I going next with this? So doing this application, this Black Man Simulator, I was unexpected in the demand for it and the reception of it. When I had the exhibition, I had a room probably half the size of this auditorium. It was completely packed. And the line went out the doors and around the corner, and people stood in line for a pretty long time to experience this project, this device I had. And I only had one, so one of the things that I knew I had to do up front is I had to limit the time in there. So my experience was 1 minute long. It was hard to get it down to the 1 minute, but I limited the time, got it down so I can get people in and out really fast. To provide relevant content and good information, I was able to do research in the city of Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta, and there were a lot of participants, a lot of volunteers who helped me collect information and who volunteered information to provide feedback for this particular project. I'm also a recipient of several grants, and I had sponsors in the area of Atlanta, and that allowed me to work at my own time, my own pace, and not have to worry about meeting anybody's requirements, meeting any contractual obligations, and having my own funding was a really freeing experience. So I heard someone ask a question about funding earlier. There are a ton of opportunities for funding. There are partnership opportunities. There are grants everywhere. There's people giving money away all over the place. All you got to do is ask, and you can get some money pretty easy. And then direct contracts. And what I mean by direct contracts, if you can partner or if you can create a contract with someone and maybe utilize that contract to develop a technology or a component of your overall project, those are beneficial. Every time I have a contract, I try to utilize the technology that I have down the road. So like Unreal Engine, right? So hey, I'll build your environment using Unreal. The future goals, where am I going to go to next? The Black Man Simulator was always a prototype, and there was always a desire to go through several iterations. I'm in phase 2 now, where I've expanded this human experience simulator into the dance environment. I have a contract with the city of Atlanta, and one of our challenges, one of the goals was to bring VR, AR, and dance to a community that typically wouldn't seek that out. And to do it at a low cost or at a free model. So that's currently in production. Some of the other goals I'm working on, as I mentioned, I try to use these direct contracts to create new technology. So through this contract, I'm trying to reduce the cost as much as possible. Figure out how to get this stuff to individuals at little or no cost. And again, as I mentioned, increased exposure of experience. One of my goals is to get this out in front of individuals who typically wouldn't seek this out. So I'm partnering with schools and education systems, museums, various colleges to increase my exposure. So I won't go through this, but there's additional articles, there are additional information on the Black Man Simulator. These are various articles in the Atlanta area that talked about it. I provided various interviews, and I'll give additional information on it. Also, as part of the project, the Black Man Simulator project, I created a web series. So while I was interviewing the individuals to collect the content for the experience, the videos turned out so moving, so passionate that I was like, I have to share this. I need to put this on YouTube because the stories you're telling me were amazing, right? You know, as a Black man, right, I'm listening to these stories and they were moving, and I learned a lot through this project. So those are available on YouTube as well. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for questions. 4 minutes. Sure.
Are we going to see the experience?
I did not put the experience up here in video, but there is a video on the web series of the experience there.
If anybody else has a question, just raise your hand. Or if we have questions on Slido. Any?
Do you have any metrics about the people's reactions to the experience?
I have a few metrics. So the reactions were across the board. Everyone was amazed, and a lot of the feedback was that this was an experience that was an eye-opener. Now, the metrics that I have are just me eyeballing it, right? So I'm there, and the crowd, I was very impressed to see a very diverse mix of individuals, and diverse in age range, diverse in ethnic background, diverse in just, you know, all sorts of walks of life. And I was surprised to see that. There were individuals there who participated in the 60 sit-in, and they gave me some feedback. And one of the gentlemen said this took him back to the experience when he lived it, went through it the first time. And it was a compliment to me that it was so engaging for him.
And are you going to have a Black woman simulator?
Sure, why not? You know, I got a whole long list of these things. I think I skipped a slide, but I had a slide up there to talk about future versions. Like, you know, let's get some veterans. Let's get some of their experiences. They were mentioned about post-traumatic stress disorder on the previous panel. You know, like it's veterans. Let's find some mental illnesses that may be applicable here. You know, sports. Dancers, you know, athletes, you know, things that not all of us can do as far as sports. So those are some of the items that I plan to go down the road. So yeah, why not a Black woman simulator? Hey, I'm open for that. Okay, that is my time.
There's one question here.
Okay. Yes, my goals is to make the experience accessible online. It's something that I'm pioneering now with the second phase of it, is how to get it online and make it accessible to individuals who are not in the physical area, physical location. Okay.
Has there been any discussion of getting this into the hands of law enforcement agencies to try to build empathy amongst police officers?
Yes, we had some individuals at the exhibition, and that was one of the comments they had, was like, one individual, he was he was a cop, he wasn't on duty cop. And he said, hey, you know, this would be something great that will help us dialogue with our community to, you know, maybe create a safe space where we can ask the questions. They can ask us the questions, and we can give them honest responses without any retaliation, right? So the answer is yes, there has been dialogue on that.